Great. So I presume we are now live. Thanks everyone who's tuned in online, YouTube, and we have a Teams meeting going on. We have some people live in the room in Manchester, which is great to see. So yeah, thanks everyone. I'll get started. So first things first, who am I? I'm Phil Walton. I'm a delivery consultant here at Global Logic. And I'm going to be taking you through the workshop today, which is just an introduction to Nginx and some of its capabilities as a server, web server, and some routing basics as well. So what you can be expecting today is a very, very brief bit of theory. Cover that first, then a step-by-step workshop, so hopefully you've got your laptops ready to work on. And to finish with, we've got a little friendly competition with a prize. And for those of you who are in the office, free pizza follows. Okay, so for this bit, you don't need your laptops. I'm going to just talk for hopefully as short amount of time as possible. Brief introduction to what Nginx is, right? So Nginx is a web server. And like any web server that you might have worked with before, it can serve static content. It can do basic page routing. That's what web servers do. But Nginx has become known more for its additional features, such as being a proxy, which we're going to look at later on. Being a proxy means lots of things, but mainly the sort of selling point of Nginx is that it can be a load balancer, it can do back-end routing as a reverse proxy, and it can be a cache for your web content. This little icon up here is just to demonstrate, like really base level, that Nginx is a piece of software that needs to be installed onto a machine. It doesn't come ready installed unless you use some sort of image that has that. And once it's installed, it's open source. Once it's installed, it has default settings that allow it to basically start instantly. We're going to look after that about how we can configure it to be more custom. And then briefly, we're going to cover some sort of like basic architectures of a web server and what else Nginx can do. So like this is the most basic configuration you can have for a web server. If Nginx is that green block in the middle, Nginx holds files locally. And when you make a request to an Nginx server, it goes and gets those files locally and serves them to you over HTTP protocol. It can handle page routing, and it can also do other things by reading the request URL to give you specific things. Like if you go to /image.jpg, it will find a file called image.jpg. Okay, later we're going to look at what load balancing is. So here is a sort of traditional, well, I've called it traditional. I mean, the only word I could reach for was traditional. It's like a sort of a non-ideal architecture. If you were to have some sort of back-end service that made calls to a database and provided data to your client, if you set it up like this with one server speaking to one database, that one server could be quite easily overloaded. So load balancing is simply replacing your one server with kind of a gateway, something whose job it is simply to take a request, not do any logic to that request other than pass it on to something else behind the scenes. So in this instance, we've got 3 clones of a server. They all do the same job, but they're obviously splitting that load into thirds. It just means that your services are less likely to be overloaded, and also it means that like requests can be split evenly or even weighted. You know, you could have certain servers which are bigger, taking more of the traffic. Okay, and lastly, we're going to touch at the end of the presentation on microservices. So microservice architecture means, it looks at first glance very similar to load balancing. The only difference is that the job of the Nginx server here would be actually reading the request and applying rules to decide where to send the request onto at the back end. So it is still just sending the requests on to something else, so it's a reverse proxy again. But this time there's some logic held in Nginx to decide where it goes and what to do with those requests. The advantage of microservice architecture is that it allows scaling of only the services that you need to scale. So from a DevOps mind, means that we can easily spin up more or less instances of a service that we need to, and not the whole service as a monolith. Okay, that covers theory. It's time to get started. So if you've got your laptop with you, it's time to open that up and get to, is that big enough for everyone to read? Get to lab.devopsplayground.org. The first few steps will be on the slide, but as soon as you're logged in, there's a README file that we're going to follow for the rest of the workshop. When you get to, I'm going to go there now actually, when you get to lab.devopsplayground.org, it should look like this. And you log in with your Meetup username. That's if you've actually responded to Meetup to get to this event. There are some internal members of staff who've responded through Teams. If you've done that, then use your Teams username, including any spaces. So I am Phil Walton. I'm going to check that again. Is it because I have... Just a quick sanity check. Is there anyone in this room who is not getting that message that I got?
I am successfully.
You're successfully in. So it's probably just me. I've cached something or not added myself.
It's probably fair.
It is. Yeah. So what I'm going to do is... You'd have thought I added myself. Yeah, it was Phil Walton. So I don't know what I was doing wrong the first time. Something was cached wrong. There we go. So you're given a username and you're given some links to follow. And you're only going to, at first, you're only going to need to open 2 more tabs. One is for your terminal on the virtual machine that you've been provided with, which you can get now and open. You'll notice that you've got the password, which is the same for everybody. So when you get to your terminal, you'll be prompted to enter your password. There we go. And the other tab you need to open is for your code editor, which again, well, actually that won't prompt you for a password. It might prompt you with some other stuff like, are you sure? You just click yes. One more step we need to follow before we are officially ready to get started. If you go into your README, which is in your code editor, scroll down into In Project, into Nginx Workshop, find README. There is one sort of slightly less automated than desired step we're going to do, which is we're going to enter our personal Panda name into a few files. It doesn't really matter, it just makes one of the steps later on a little bit smoother. So if you go to step 0.5 and copy this script, enter that in your terminal. This is just going to enter your Panda name. So obviously an argument for this is, now what am I? Pumped Panda. Pumped Panda. It's going to go away, it's going to do some stuff behind the scenes, but essentially that means that later on we'll know who's who. If you think you've entered it wrong, you can just run it again, it's fine. And again, it's not a breaking change. You can not do that step if you want to, it just makes something a little bit less smooth later on. Okay, last thing is just a personal tip. The code editor that we provided you with doesn't do previews on README files. So if you like to read it like I do in the preview version, you can just right-click download on that file and it'll download to your machine, or you could even download the whole repo. You can clone the repo, which is linked on the YouTube page, I believe. Okay. This is the first point where I'm going to say to anyone either in the room or online, if you're having any troubles, because I've been in your shoes, there are going to be things that you're not sure about or that you've mistyped or not read or you need someone to go back or help. Please put your hand up or put in the chat. Come and help me. I don't know what that was supposed to do. Could you say that again, please? We've got plenty of time tonight, so just ask. But hopefully most of you are now at this point. We're at step 1. We've done step 0. We don't need a slideshow anymore. You can keep referring to the README. If at any point my voice kind of just drifts away and you're not listening anymore because you're concentrating on something else, you can just follow the README all the way through this workshop. All the steps should work. Okay, but we're going to go ahead with step one, which is we're going to install Nginx. It's an open source piece of software. You can use any package manager to do this, but because we've provided you with an Amazon Linux image, we're going to use the Amazon Linux package manager. So if you copy and paste this first command into your terminal and run that, you might be prompted for your password again, and you might be prompted to say yes or no that you're happy to install. Yes.
Stuck here.
Okay. Do you want to just tell me, and I can, because it might be other people stuck on the same thing.
It's not with my meetup username.
Yes.
I did submit. After that, it will take some time.
Have you made sure you've included capital letters, because it is case sensitive,
Oh yeah.
and if there's a space in your name, you need the space as well. And if it's still not working, I can suggest open it in an incognito tab, or what's the equivalent of incognito in like Firefox or private browsing mode. Okay, please let me know if you're still not on. Jake, Tom, I'm not sure if any of you could go over and see if there's anything you can spot, but it's just one of those things that I can't tell from here exactly what it is. But I'm going to carry on. So we've installed Nginx, right? So we're going to just look around now. We're going to play with some basic commands to see what we can do with Nginx. I'm going to clear my terminal just because it annoys me when there's loads of stuff there. So the first thing we can do is check that Nginx is installed. So let's run nginx-v. So we know it's now there. To start Nginx, that is to make sure it's listening for requests, we can use the command nginx. They were really creative with that one. This is something that requires sudo privileges, so I'll run sudo nginx. Okay, it won't look like it's done anything. So the next command we can run to see that it is running is ps, which is not an nginx thing, but we can just filter our result of ps to see what processes have the keyword nginx in them. We're not going to cover this in detail, but you'll see that there is root who's running nginx master process, and then nginx itself spins up other processes, worker processes. You can also do a quick sanity check if you want to open another browser. If you go to your, so for instance, I'm Pumped Panda. If I go to pumpedpanda at devopsplayground.org with no sort of / after that, I should get this screen, which is what is being served by Nginx now. So that is triple confirmation, it's definitely on and it's definitely running. I'm going to leave that open because we're going to come back to that later on. Okay, if we can start Nginx, we can stop it. So to send Nginx any commands while it is running, we use the -s flag, -s for signal. So we're sending it a signal to quit in this case. So copy and paste. We're up to 2.3 if you're following along. And then if that's worked successfully, you can do the ps command again, and you should see that Nginx is no longer running. I'm not going to do 2.4 because it's already stopped, but the stop command is just a slightly more forceful version of the quit command. Okay, if you were to start Nginx again, you could run this tail command. So we're going to do that now. Tail obviously gives you the most recent readouts of something, and we're going to get the most recent readouts of the access log file with this command. So start Nginx first, and then run the tail command, and you should be greeted with something like this. I mean, we're not going to analyze what that's saying, but the cool thing you can do is if you open your browser and just click refresh a few times, in your terminal you'll see a load more requests coming in to your web server. Oh, and there's someone else making requests to my web server. Cool. I think, oh, someone trying to make a post request to my server. Interesting. Okay, that's actually one of the next points I was going to make. So if you've got curl installed on your actual machine, or if you want to, you can just open a new terminal window on this virtual machine. Try making a curl request to your own address. So it'd be curl pumpedpanda@devopsplayground.org. Okay, you can see that you get some HTML back. In fact, I'm going to do this now. Oh, this is when I question, is curl installed on this machine? Let's find out. Curl, and I'm going to copy and paste this. And remove the end. Yeah, so I sent my curl request. I got the same as the HTML that was being served in my browser. You can see there, welcome, or what does it say? If you see this page, Nginx web server is running successfully. Now, if you try that as a post request, and to do posts with curl, you just put a capital X flag, and then all caps, post. This is going to send a post request with no body, but it's just to prove a point. We get not allowed. And back in our tail logs, you can see, here's on my screen, I'll zoom in, you can see here there's that post request and it got a 405. So this is just the broad point I'm making here is that there are already some rules, some configuration on Nginx. So how is it that we can configure behavior on Nginx? So let's go on to what are we on now? Step 3. Step 3, we're going to look at where. Okay, so if you're following, step 3, we are going to look at a file now. This file is called nginx.conf. It's stored away inside of etc/nginx. It's a part of the stuff that was installed when we installed Nginx. And this file, nginx.conf, basically holds the rules, the configuration for how Nginx should behave when we make requests to it. So to do this, we're going to copy this cat command, put it in our browser. Or you can finish the tail command. We can get out of that now. We don't need it anymore. So let's cat the contents of this file. Okay, you can either do it yourself or you can look at my screen. So there's a ton of stuff in this file. And I'm not going to even try and explain it. I mean, very vaguely, you can see blocks like events, HTTP. Inside HTTP, there's something called server. There's a clue here that port 80 is being used. So that's telling Nginx which port to listen on. And then down the bottom, there's a commented out block that's provided just in case you want to use this as a server with an SSL certificate on it. But for today, we're going to start with a blank slate. We're going to completely remove everything from this configuration file and replace it with our own. So to do that, we're going to take advantage of our code editor, because if you're like me, you might not like vi or vim. You could do this all with vi or vim though. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to copy and paste a new configuration into a file that I think I've already put into the code editor. It's in the folder called config, and it's a file called mynginx.conf. So we'll copy and paste this. This is going to replace all of that stuff, so we're kind of starting from scratch. So inside config, mynginx.conf. Look, I've put that much already there for you. So that's done. Save that file. Now at the moment, all we've done is created a file. We haven't actually replaced anything. So to do that, we're going to just apply some very liberal permissions to our nginx.conf file. So step 3, this is not good practice, obviously, but it just makes things a bit smoother for today. So let's open up permissions on the nginx.conf file. And then we can replace the contents with the cat command, which is already here. I want you to cat the contents of my nginx.conf into the nginx.conf file. Oh, occasionally, you're going to get asked to enter your password again, like me. Okay, and just to triple check that you have replaced the contents of that file, you can just cat that file, cat etc/nginx/nginx.conf, and you should see the contents that we were just playing with before. So that's definitely replaced now. If you go back to your browser, the one where we could see what was being served, and refresh, you should see exactly as we had before, which is a good thing, because we haven't broken it. Okay, so far, all we've done is got rid of all that stuff in the configuration file and replaced it with a very minimal one. So I'm going to just draw your attention to one thing in here, which is, well, we've already spoken about the listen directive. That's telling it to listen on port 80. But the thing to note is the root directive. Root tells Nginx where your files are stored, where the things that you're going to serve over the web, where they are. So this tells it to look inside the default location, which is /user/share/nginx/HTML. And that's where this page is coming from. But what if we want to change that? So step 4 is how we conserve our own content. And there's a little bit of work to do here, guys. We're going to create our own index.html file, and we're going to put it inside a folder called public. You can call it whatever you want, but just so that you can follow the steps, let's call it public, and inside public, a file called index.html. So you can do that all in your code editor. And then in index.html, if you're ahead of me, you'll have put something in there. You can either make your own sample HTML page, or if you're lazy like me, you can copy and paste that one. So what we're hoping to do is replace that default Nginx content with our own. And if you remember, it was the root directive that told Nginx where to look for that folder. So all we're going to do now is edit the root part of our Nginx configuration to point to our folder, which is called, if you remember, public, and that's inside of this Nginx workshop. So obviously, if you've used a different folder name to me, you'll need to pay particular attention to make sure you've got the right root directive here. But I'm just going to copy and paste this new configuration, put it into my configuration here. So there's only that one line that's changed. Let's make sure we put that content into the actual Nginx folder, which is running the cat command like we did before. And then let's go to our browser to see that we are seeing the new page, the one that we put in, which should say, this is a sample page. Okay, I've refreshed, but there's been no change. Does anybody know why that might be? This is a deliberate sort of setup. Cache, good. That was a really good suggestion, actually. Not in this case. It's not to do with caching. So essentially, it's to do with the way Nginx needs to be told what to do. We started Nginx with one configuration. Nginx now has a memory of how that was configured when it started. We haven't told it that there is a new configuration. So the command to tell Nginx to kind of refresh or re-look at its configuration if we've changed it is reload. Okay, so we're going to send a command now. It's nginx-s reload. That's step 4.3. This will tell it to re-look at that configuration. And you shouldn't need to refresh more than once. You should just now get your sample page, which you put in. It's still exciting to me when even little things like that work. You've changed a thing, you saw it change. Hooray. Hopefully more of that coming. Okay, so at this point, are there any questions about what we've done? I'm going to carry on. Obviously, if you want to, go at your own pace, but ask away if there's anything. So we're going to look next at page routing, because obviously most websites don't just have one HTML file. We have lots of files for different pages. So how would we do that? Well, first of all, we're going to create the pages, and then we're going to look at how to serve them, depending on the request. So let's quickly create a new HTML file called cart.html. This could be for some sort of online shop. So I'm going to create this inside of the same folder as before, inside the public folder. New file, cart.html, and in there I'm going to copy and paste from my README this very imaginative shopping cart. Now, Nginx by default looks for a file called index. So we're going to need to now do something to tell it to look for a file called something other than index, depending on which page we go to. If we go to /cart, we would like the cart file. So, step 5.2 shows you we need something new. I'm going to copy and paste this in first, and then we'll talk about what's happening. So back to my nginx.config file, replace it with this. You may have already spotted the new bit. Not sure if I can zoom in on there. I can't zoom in. So the new bit here is this, it's called a location context. This says that if you get a request to /cart, then look in the folder called public. Now so far that's exactly the same as we had it before. But now we're using a new directive called the try-files directive. Try-files tells it which files to look for in the order that you specify. So this is saying first it's going to look for cart.html, which obviously is what we want it to do. And if it can't find it, it's going to do this, which is it's going to throw a 404 error. Because we've specified the /cart path, it means that any other paths will just revert to this original rule, which is look for the index file. So if you do the same command as we did before, it's the cat command to make sure we actually overwrite the contents of the Nginx config file. And then don't forget the reload command, otherwise Nginx won't know that you've changed the configuration. And then check your browser. You'll see something really uninteresting because it's the same page, but if you do go to /cart now, you should be served with cart HTML. So that's the location block. Really simple, but the next thing you're probably thinking is, hang on, most websites will have many pages, not just two. If we want lots of pages, do we just keep adding new location blocks, a unique one for every page, or is there a simpler way? So obviously, they've thought of this, there's a much simpler way. So let's go on to 5.3. We're going to now create 3 different pages in a sort of folder system to keep things organized. Inside public, we're still going to have our index.html, we're going to leave that one there. But then we're going to create some subfolders, one called cart, and then inside of cart, we're going to use the key name again, index.html instead of cart.html. And then a folder called, well, you can call these anything you want, right? But this, in my example, in the folder called about, we're going to have another file called index.html. So now they're all called index.html, and we're going to have to make sure Nginx is configured to know which one to serve. So a little bit of file creation now. You can delete cart.html if you would like to, or you can keep it. It's interesting to see the difference. So cart. Index.html. About. Index.html. Obviously fill them with some HTML. As always, there's examples provided. Now, do we need to reload? Well, technically no, we haven't changed the configuration yet. We're going to do that next. You can try though, go to your browser and see what happens if you go to /about. So weirdly, this works by default. We haven't changed any configuration, all we've done is used a folder structure. That's because the /about, which hasn't been catered for in any other way, is actually treated as a folder to look in. And you can use that, you can apply that rule whenever you're adding new pages. But because we now have this strange situation where we have let's actually do this, /cart which displays cart.html, but then we've got the other cart, which is inside of the cart folder. We're now not being served with that one. I would have to somehow, I can't get into that folder. I can't get into the cart folder. I'm still being served with this first one. So to demonstrate this point, we're going to add one kind of cover-all rule to say, look in the right folder and only in those folders look for index.html. So that's this here. It's a location block that just says look inside public, whatever the case, and then it will automatically add that file path on and look inside the folder. So 5.4, update your Nginx configuration. So now we're not specifying /cart. It will automatically add that onto the end of the root path. Save, cat the contents, reload, and go to your browser. And this time, if you go to /cart, we should be served with the actual one inside of the cart folder that we were looking for. Now, in this case, if you did want to go back and get cart.html, you would have to type that in the browser, cart.html. Yeah, I think that works. So that covers kind of routing and having pages. What we haven't looked at yet, obviously, is anything other than an HTML file. Like, it's not normal to just serve plain HTML. Usually you serve, at bare minimum, you would serve CSS, usually some JavaScript. A ton of other things as well. We're going to keep it simple for this example. So we're going to look at how to serve other types of files now. To do this, and this is, I promise the last time we're going to have to do anything approaching hard work, is we're going to do some more creating some files. So it's the same file structure as we had before, but now as well as index.html, you're going to create styles.css and script.js. And you're going to do that for each of the pages we've created so far. So inside of public, you have those 3 files. Then inside of cart, those 3 files, and inside of about. Right, so script.js. Styles.css, script.js, styles.css, and the last one. Okay, and because they're empty files, we're then going to fill them in with some very, very basic CSS and JavaScript. So the minimum I could think of was, let's give a color to each one. So our H1 is going to be a color of your choice. You'll do that 3 times though, and you know, for observation's sake, let's make each one a different color. Go for blue. Cart can be orange, and about can be green, yellow, nice. And kind of most basic JavaScript I could think of that would confirm to us that it has worked is a console log. So inside of each one, if you just put console.log, and we'll just put a message, something like, well, this one is my about folder, so I'll say /about script, script has loaded. And we'll do the same thing for cart and the same thing for, well, we don't have a name for the other one, but we'll just call it /. The /script has loaded. Okay. There's a lot to do there, but when you're up to speed, let's just go to our browser. We haven't changed any of the configuration yet, but let's just have a look. Now for this, most of you are familiar, but if you're not, we're going to use the inspect tools, which is you right-click on your browser. There we go. And then scroll down to inspect. Is this called the same thing on every browser? I only ever use Chrome, so I don't work for Google, but there you go. So if we go into inspect tools and go to, let's go to console or sources and then reload this page. Oh, what did I do? Did I knock it off? Oh, it's because I'm still going to cart.html and I deleted that page. Excellent. Okay. Let's go to sources, elements, console, sources. So at the moment, it hasn't served any of the other files that we've asked for. Why is that? Did I not save?
It needs to be the head.
Ah, I've missed one of my own steps. Excellent. Yeah, of course. If you add CSS and JavaScript, you need to tell your index file that it needs to call those scripts and CSS. So inside of your head, put your link to your CSS and your script, like I didn't. So you'll be ahead of me now, probably, some of you. So just go to your browser. You should find that actually JavaScript files are already being served. So when I've caught up with you, we'll discuss why that's happening. Try again. So yeah, so now I've actually put the link in. You can see in inspect, it downloaded script.js, got that. There's my console log, / script is loaded. There's styles.css. And in the console, I got the message, script has loaded. So not only has the JavaScript been received, but it has actually executed. So why is the H1 not whatever color it is I chose? Like, I think it was blue. Why is that not applied? It's there inside sources. We've got it. It says the color should be blue. That's definitely an H1. So, you might know the answer, but basically we're going to talk very briefly about something called mime types. So mime types are, it's easier to think of these as the same as being file extensions. So your .js or your .css or .html. If we think of it like that, it's an easy thing, it's an easy concept. Mime types are little clues, little instructions that your web server has to give to your browser to say, hey, I'm going to send you some files that end with .css. I'm going to send you some files that end with .js. Is that cool? This is what to do with them. So that instruction has to be given, usually. Now, I actually discovered something when I was creating this workshop, is that Chrome, by default, already knows what to do with JavaScript files. Files that end in .js natively are understood. But CSS isn't. So we now need to go back to our configuration and we need to tell Nginx to give it that hint, that mime typed hint. So back into our README, you can copy and paste this entire configuration. You might notice though, the only bit that's been added is a block called types. So we'll add that in and then we'll discuss. Cat the contents, reload, go back to your browser, fingers crossed for a blue title. What did I not do? Do I just need to hard reload maybe? What did I not do? Did I save it? Oh, is it that it's prompted me for my password and I haven't put it in? That's what I've done, so there we go. Now try. It's typical, isn't it, when you do it live, right? We roll with it. I'm expecting that to be a blue title. And in a second, I'm sure I'll work out what it is I've forgotten to do. I'm going to maybe just try those commands again and just make sure I haven't mistyped anything. But we've told it to accept files that end in .css and treat them as text/CSS files. Such a letdown. Let's open a new tab and go there. What am I? Pumped Panda. Oh no. Well, hopefully someone on the chat will work out what it is I've done. Has everyone else got this far, and have they got a coloured title? Yes. So it does work, it's just that some of us are half asleep after a long day. Yeah. What is it? We've got that. We've told it what mime types to use. Did I save it? How bizarre. Okay, if this takes me more than 10 seconds to finish, I'm not going to waste time on it because I've done it 10 times in my own time and it works. There's something going on that I've not thought of tonight. We've given it the instruction. I mean, we can go on to the next step and it might actually fix this, because the next step is, if you think about it, there are quite a lot of different file types. We've suggested that the browser should understand what to do with these 3 types of files. There are actually loads. So Nginx provides you a much nicer and cleaner way of specifying, please accept all of the standard file types, of which there are some hundreds.
Your URL does work on my laptop.
So it's me that's somehow cached the wrong CSS. Okay, it's to do with caching, we can live with that. So I'm going to replace my Nginx config now with, the only bit that's changed here is line 3, where it says include mime types. So this is an Nginx baked in file that says, here's a long list of file types and what to do with them, please use them all. Rather than you having to list every single one. Okay, I'm just going to open a brand new window. How that's going to help, I don't know, but hopefully. So cruel. Okay, well, it works. It works. It does work. It's just a bit of a letdown that it hasn't worked on the night. Never mind. So mime types gives that instruction to your browser, tells it to get any file that ends in whatever and treat it in such a way. How bizarre. Never mind. Okay, so moving on. We've looked enough, I think, at web content serving. Like, we know that we can have different files with different pages, and that can all be configured quite simply. So we're going to look at a different feature of Nginx now, which is load balancing. This is a good thing from a DevOps point of view. Load balancing allows your services to be more resilient, means they're less likely to be overloaded, and it can be done really easily with Nginx. It's like one of the simplest things we can do. For now, we're going to quit Nginx for reasons that will become clear. So if you copy the quit command into your terminal, so it won't be running anymore. So if you...
Spotted your issue, by the way.
Have you? What was it?
In your head you put styles.css instead of style.css.
So annoying. Okay, well, there we go. So just to repeat that, I've made a typo. Like, I'm the only person that's ever done that. But yeah, there we go. So it's always something simple. That's why my CSS wasn't loading.
Then that brings the question, why did it work on my laptop?
Ooh, why did it work on someone else's? Don't know. Don't know. This is strange. That'll be the topic of my next DevOps Playground. Right, okay. So conceptually, right, what we're going to do now is we're going to spin up for every person who's taking part, and I'm assured there's quite a few people online, everyone's going to spin up 4 things now. an Nginx load balancer, and 3 backend services. Now, just a bit of thinking, you might be thinking, right, that's going to be really expensive for us to spin all this up in a real environment. So we're not. We're going to do like a virtual example, and for that we're going to use Docker. Docker is an excellent tool for creating like a virtual network of services. If we look inside, in our code editor, if we look inside the load balancer folder, there's it. Close public now, we don't need that. Load balancer, we've got a Docker compose file. If you have a quick look in there, you can see 4 separate things. These are the 4 services we're going to spin up with Docker, so they're not real machines. They're just going to live on your machine. And this allows us to demonstrate load balancing without spending a load of money. The top service is going to be our Nginx image. It's going to act as our load balancer. We're still going to have to change a configuration file so you can see something going on with volume mounting. And then the other 3 services are just clones of a server. This server uses express.js to just return a string. They're all clones because obviously load balancers should lead to multiple copies of the same service. If you look inside nginx.config, at the moment we're not doing anything too exciting. We're going to just return 200 and a string. And inside server, if you're interested, you can see the Docker file, how we built the image. It's very basic. And the server code, which you can see is just going to take any GET request. And when it gets that request, it's going to return a string. This text is served by, and then a number. So to start these 4 services, don't use our code editor. We're actually going to go to the terminal. I'm going to cd into that load balancer folder. So I've got the command here. Put that in your terminal, and then run the command docker compose up. And this is the new Docker plugin, so we don't need the hyphen docker hyphen compose. It's just docker space compose space up. Okay, the first time you do this, it's going to build the images, so it'll take maybe 10 seconds. Every time afterwards, it should only take 1 second. So we're creating a virtual network of 4 services here, so it saves us a bit of money, and we can still see the same outcome as what would happen if we had these things really spun up in real environments. So there we have the 3 Express servers, and the Nginx server is just running sort of silently in the background. If we go, because the Nginx, I forgot to say, is still running on port 80 and it's mapped to our machine's port 80, we should actually still be able to go to the browser and see the text that is being returned by Nginx at the moment. So obviously we're going to change this in a second. We're not using our 3 backend services. So, to implement load balancing, it's pretty simple. Inside our location block, inside our configuration file, we're going to add a location block first that is going to sort of demonstrate step 1 on the load balancing journey, which is something called Germany. Where did that come from? Something called a proxy pass. Proxy pass just basically means when you get a request, send it on to someone else. Now, if you've never used Docker Compose before, which, you know, this is fairly recent to me, I thought this was a really cool feature of Docker Compose. You'll see that it's being, It's being forwarded to something called HTTP server 1. And I don't know what that address is, but this is something that Docker provides, is that if you name one of your services, like name it server 1, then it is then known like a sort of virtual namespace inside your Docker network. So we are actually forwarding on to like a website, or a URL, sorry, that is known in your Docker network. We don't have the convenience of running Nginx reload unless you were to do like a separate terminal with your Nginx Docker network running in the background. I find it much easier to just stop the service by doing Control-C, stop all 4 services and restart them. It only takes a second. That's because we've now got a new configuration. So that rule was saying, when you get this request, whatever the request is, forward it to server 1, which if you remember was returning a string of this text is served by, and there we have it. So step 1 to understanding load balancer is understanding the proxy pass. This is technically what's called a reverse proxy. Nginx is doing nothing logically other than passing the request on, and the request ends up back at the location where it was called from. Okay, so now we're going to add one more thing, and this completes load balancing. It's like as simple as that. We're going to copy and paste this new Nginx configuration, and the only new part to this, well, it's kind of two slightly nuanced differences. In the top of our Nginx configuration, we have what's called a backend, an upstream block. Upstream blocks specify what the names of your backend services are. So we had the same as the namespacing before, server 1, server 2, server 3, just like we had it. But this time they're mapped at the start. This part here, this backend underscore host, could be anything. It's a string of your choosing. But whatever you choose to name that map of servers is then referenced in your proxy pass. So now we have a list of backend services. And when we get to line 13 and we pass the request on, it's going to pass it to one of the servers in that list. And by default, it's going to do that in a round-robin fashion. 1, 2, 3, back to 1. Okay, so you can save that. You can restart your Docker network and have a look. You get something marginally more exciting than what we had before, but point proved, I think. Okay, so to see this in action, you just refresh the page a few times. So you can now see each of the backend services being called one after another.
We did have something come in chat as well, Phil.
Oh yeah?
If you press Control F5, it forces a refresh.
Of the Docker
That
network.
would have been earlier, but worth mentioning.
It is worth mentioning. So apparently, and I've not tried it yet, not verified, but someone on chat says, if we want to restart our Docker network, is that what they're
I
saying?
think it was for the colour actually, for the CSS earlier.
Oh, way back then, if I want to refresh the cache, Control F5, right.
They wanted a shout out.
Okay, thank you. Right, so we've got a load balancer now. We've got 3 backend services all doing the same thing, and we've got an Nginx load balancer in front. So we're going to just take it one more step further, which is kind of proxying but with rules now. What if we want to direct certain requests to a specific server instead of just randomly or instead of just a round robin? So to do this, we're going to add another section. It's the map section. Have I got an old version here? I think I might have an old version here. I'm just going to go to my README here. Check, where are we? Step 7, I think. Yeah, so this is the up-to-date version, 7.7. So we're going to add something called a map, which is similar to the upstream block we had before, but this is going to set some extra rules. So let's copy and paste this into our configuration first and then talk about it. So load balancer, Nginx conf. Okay, I've tried to use good naming terminology here as well. So at the top, we have exactly the same as before. We have our upstream. That defines our list of back-end services. They're all clones of each other. But then the map block, second block down, is saying, I would like you to define a new variable called specific host. And to define it, I'd like you to look at something called $URI. So this is, we're not going to go deep into this, but Nginx provides certain inbuilt environment variables every time a request comes in. So the $URI variable is just available to us, and it tells us the path of the request that has come in. So this says, in the map block, if you get a request to /first, then don't just pick a random backend server. We're going to send it to server 1. Similarly to if you go to /2, server 2, /3, server 3. If you get nothing, then default to whichever backend host you would like to. Okay, so it's kind of simple, pointless, but it proves the point that we can, if we want to, exert control, if we want to send requests to a deliberate location. So let's restart that. And then you just need to go to /first. Interesting thing is if you go to first, then second, then third, when you go to, say, 4th or 5th, you should just be directed to the next server, because there are no 4th or 5th servers. I'll go back to that round robin. So, refreshing, round robin. If we go to /2, we should get 2. There we go, let's zoom it out again. If we go to third, if I go to thid, like I've just typed in, because it's not recognized, we should get back to the round robin, yeah. So there we go, a load balancer and rules. Okay, yes?
I noticed in the latest version of that configuration, we added an extra line in the resolver.
Yes.
And that, if anybody else was curious, because I Googled it, that is the internal DNS address of Docker Compose.
Yeah. So something I found out, I'll be honest with you here, I didn't know this before I started on this, creating this workshop. The upstream block natively knew to use the namespace inside the Docker network. But the map block, when I've specified other hosts, didn't seem to understand what /server_2 was. So we use the Docker network namespace service, DNS. Yeah, well spotted. Okay, so we've done a lot of code along, a lot of step-by-step, nothing really where you get to show off. So we're going to do something now. It is based on Nginx, right? So there's a little bit of learning, but hopefully a bit of fun. We talked earlier briefly about microservice apps. For anybody who doesn't know, some of the benefits of using a microservice architecture is that you are, well, obviously separation of concerns, so it allows for working on different aspects of your main application in completely separate services. Which allows you to be more agile when you're making increments. But also it allows you to scale services up or down individually. It is becoming far more common than the monolith architecture, which is how everything used to be done. What I've done, and this is something that you can look at in your own time as well, because maybe I'm going to skip over it quite fast now, just to get to the fun part, is I've created a very sort of old school dashboard website. Like think sort of 90s, early 90s when you used to open your laptop and you used to have the clock and the weather and some reminders. These are like widgets that you could download. So I've created a dashboard site that's going to use widgets that you are going to provide. So to do that, I'll do a very quick walkthrough. I think I have a diagram as well. Yeah, here's a quick diagram. We'll do a walkthrough. So the basic architecture is I have an Nginx server which I'm going to host on my machine. So you'll all be able to go to pumpedpanda.devopsplayground.org to get to the dashboard website. Then the dashboard website is going to download some HTML, and in that HTML there's an instruction to also make further requests. So loads more requests are then going to come into Nginx, and it's going to say, please go to CoolPanda and get some HTML from them and some JavaScript and some CSS. Go to GroovyPanda. Go to all the pandas that I've got in a list and see what they're serving. And as long as they are serving something, add it to the dashboard. Okay? So to demonstrate that, I've got a couple of samples. Let's look very quickly at the code. So if you want to find this yourself, although you don't need to mess with this part, but if you want to, go into microservice-app and then into HTML. The HTML itself is very minimal. It's got like a nav bar, it's got a menu, and then it's got a thing called widget space with nothing in it. Then in the JavaScript, this is where the clever stuff happens. We've got the list of all the services we want to look for. And I can add more to this if there are that many people joining in. Then I might need to add more to this list. It's going to do a quick, like a little knock on the door with fetch. It's going to say, is there a response from this server? If there is a response, then I want you to add a new div to our page, which is a widget. But the widget, and this is a really nuanced thing, but I thought it was cool. The widget is not being requested directly from you. The requests, remember, are passing through our main Nginx server. Nginx server is then proxying the requests onto you. That nuance means, if you wanted to, you could firewall all of your backend services. Okay? It also means like you're not exposing the address of your backend services in any code anywhere, because it's all held on Nginx. It's not being served to the front end. So that's cool. So that's basically how it works. You feel free to look through that in your own time. I'm going to spin that up now. And like I say, we don't all need to host this. I'm going to host this at Pumped Panda. What you're going to do, if you would like to, for a prize, is you're going to design your own widget inside the widget folder. There's loads of instructions telling you exactly how to do this. Hopefully it's foolproof. We'll see all your widgets appear on the dashboard, which I'm going to start now. And by the time pizza gets here, or maybe before that, depending on whenever we feel like it, let's say about half an hour, we'll see who's got the best, most appealing, most impressive, logical service, what's the word I'm looking for, like full of features at widget, and we'll give them a prize. So let's spin it up. CD, back one, microservices.
Is it just .org/, I can post in the YouTube chat for the people online?
Yeah, so if I start Docker Composer, so it's pumped panda with a hyphen, .devopsplayground.org. When this is started, you should get your dashboard, okay?
I'll send it.
Oh, it's because I got /thid on the end. Okay, dashboard with 3 examples that I've pre-made. We've got a random inspiring quote generator every time we refresh, new quote, and we've got ask the Magic 8 Ball, why did my CSS not work? It has to be a yes or no question though.
Yes.
My sources say yes. Okay, so now if you start your Nginx server in whichever way you want to, and there are instructions to follow, it should recognize this and add them. There's only one thing I need to do. I've kind of got my finger on the switch here. In my code, I've got a limit on how many widgets I'm going to look for, because I don't want to look for hundreds if there aren't hundreds of people doing it. So let's open this up to, what, 5, 10? I'll go for 20 to start with and see what we get. It's up to you now, though, to start serving some content, and this dashboard will get it. So save.
There's 30 people online.
Whoa, there we go. We've got Settling Panda with his default. Premium Panda is currently serving the dashboard, which I'm serving, which is meta. Lots of people still serving their step 7, the load balancer stuff. That's cool, but take time. There's someone serving. They've changed the aspect, but they're serving the dashboard. Interesting. Shantanu there. Okay, so you get the idea. I'm going to keep refreshing this. If you spend 20, 30 minutes when pizza gets here, we'll choose a winner. It's an Amazon voucher for £15. Woo! So I'm going to mute myself for this bit.
We can say 8 o'clock if you want.
Yeah, so let's put a time on it then. Let's say 8 o'clock exactly, so anyone who's following on online knows 8 o'clock.
We will
a look and choose a winner.
There's 26 online, so you might want to open up to a few more people.
Okay. I'll open up to the maximum, which I think is about 100.
Yeah.
And then if we've got too many, it's fine. Also, during this time, if anybody's got any questions, send them in or put your hand up if you're in the room.
Yeah, we can take them on YouTube and I can pass them over to you.
Cool. 16 is good for that.
You need to.
People go crazy in there. It's like riot. You're muted now, Phil, yeah. Wait, did you actually mute yourself? Yeah, I did that as well. Alright. Probably not. You can go through, yeah. You're still on screen though, you've still got the camera on you, so everyone's still able to interact. Oh no. People have been saying that for at least literally since the office opened, and not one person has decided to pick that up and sort it out. Might best go through that door. I don't know. It's a bit of an obstacle course. Just don't drop it on someone's head.
Yeah, you can do it in your own time as well. The only thing obviously then is you only get
So
to
come. Yeah. So I think this is both audio and visual.
Did you go to
So
sleep?
I could.
Did you have to respond to the thing?
Nothing really on camera, but if I press that, it would switch just the camera. But I think the main thing is it's not just for DevOps Playground, but for any other stuff that they do. Especially with Manchester, essentially going to be the biggest part of the company. I imagine more of this stuff will be going on here.
You scored what? Full 10?
Yeah.
At least 10.
The camera's on the whole room. No one in here is on camera, don't worry, but it's Phil, if you keep walking around, people can see you right up to everyone. So it's not just the corner anymore.
So dance, we'll dance. Dance while we wait. I'm going to deliberately dance. I've been in the spotlight now.
You're in the camera.
Right,
It's,
right now.
yeah, I've zoomed it out so everyone can see the room. But no one sat down is in camera, so don't worry.
Yeah, just refresh and see if there's anything missing. Okay, we've got a big piece of pizza. I like that. It's totally winning though. Oh wait, no it's not. This person is still serving the tacos.
You're putting a lot of trust into people online on this one.
I can quickly hide. I can change default to hide
technically pizza's here now. Stop the count.
There's like an action message because they've got my book.
Yeah.
Actually, there should be. I haven't decided. There should possibly be some sort of like arbitrator rather than integer.
I mean, me, Jake, and Craig, the three of us can decide it.
I have the least knowledge about anything going on here, so maybe that makes me
Yeah,
very
sure.
good.
Whatever looks pretty. Just don't pick any that starts with example.
Oh, someone's going to marry you, Phil.
Will you marry me?
Run the 8 ball.
Yeah, I'm not betting the 8 balls, but
Will you marry loved panda?
Will Phil marry Love Panda? Don't count on it.
Oh.
Sorry.
it'd be cool to get some animations in there. I guess you'd have to install something like that.
I know it's like you could do so much, but how much could you make?
Yeah, true. I mean, I'm not doing it, so I can't really see.
Hold on. Oh,
There we go.
driving panda has a button.
Does.
Dare we click the button?
The
Okay.
button doesn't work. It's getting
It's a
there.
work in progress.
We increment faster, we were agile. So going back, its next sprint is 60 seconds. Maybe that was a decoy button, because the real button does turn the train. But you kind of widget, if you click in road, did he include mime text?
Yes.
They.
They. Thank you. Here, cook booking. Well done.
Soon, yeah.
Yeah.
Trust.
Which one are you leaning towards at the moment, Craig?
You know, I get this feeling with my complete lack of knowledge, I may offend with the choice that I make, but the pizza must be good right now.
Oh, we've got a lion.
I know it's right here, beat you to that.
No longer is interested in marriage.
Right, let's put the suggestions back on, and then we'll come back and we can try it. See how we get on. Yeah, I think they would be shit.
We can do it 3 ways and see how we play it. If Jake and I don't agree, then you can be able to play it both. That'd be great. Jake and I will both pick one.
Noughts and crosses from scratch.
Let me just check some marketing users.
In 25 minutes.
In our list of people from this company, we put like tentative, and if they're not here, just say.
I think Kev signed up on Meetup, so he might have logins through
There you
Meetup.
go. So Andy Kev, like spell Kev, capital A, N G Oscar. Oh, you're right. No, I'm right. I did myself too. Oh, okay. Okay, well, let's try this then.
Go to
finish with please.
I
Any questions for Phil, please?
Type full calendar, FULL. So it'll be calendar 26, capital C. Great. Okay, capital G, capital G. Right. So if you code it slowly, it's the same address, but you just put O on it pink cloud in it. Yeah. Good work. Quick. I wasn't a living hand now as soon as it started. It depends how you're doing it. You'll have to install Nginx again as you try to do all the small commands. Don't press the one button. Okay. Okay, we've got fears. We've got test your reactions. How fast are some people?
I might have used something already.
Oh.
Might make now.
Ooh.
How do we feel about that? Okay, I'm still going to play it. So.
Yeah, it might spawn out of the box, but every if it's wrong, then it will show you.
Okay, right. Let's go hard rage rate. Oh,
You'll
nice.
see the scroll bar appear, I'm sure.
Yeah. Oh,
Just one more. It'll keep going.
oh, if I get like that, I get happy.
Yeah.
Okay. So, my suggestion for next sprint, maybe you could fix that. But like,
This is one really important.
oh yeah, I mean this is something that you probably some of you worked out. If you go to your own browser, go to your address, you get full screen for everything. So where are we? We have Phil tried to come to dinner. He's no hunger. We have someone turning back. Quote will appear here. Generate quote.
We made a heading of a figure, that's that's what's happened soon.
A lot of people are saving the rest until the last minute, I think. So,
We just got a bunch of back-end developers. You're forced to do front-end for half an hour. And they're going, how do I make it center?
oh yeah, full disclosure, it took me days to do this. Ages. Okay, it's technically 8 minutes left until the official time, so time to get going.
people, 25 people still watching, so there might still be people, which is cool.
Oh, we've got quotes from Driving Panda. All of myself, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, like strength,
That's
footage,
amazing.
muscle.
The Kung Fu Panda is amazing.
I wonder if we keep pressing, we get more quotes.
Oh, it's connected to the quote API. That's quite good.
The fourth thing people think is that repeated fast more press. Oh god.
Might be camera now.
Mm.
Oh yeah. People can hear through the camera mic occasionally, even though these mics aren't connected.
Oh, right.
Let's
It's
go
probably my laugh at the beginning. It travels.
Special reactions. Oh, there's a game. Better not to be that guy, but please could you turn off the music?
That should have ended about 2 minutes ago.
They're not adding to this.
Anything, it's just annoying. I'm liking Trusty Panda at the moment.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool. If it does something, that's even better. Because the other ones do stuff.
Maybe so nice for a second.
Ooh.
Oh,
Ooh.
Load Panda has super and doing that.
Yeah, nice CSS going on there. Little
Yeah.
rounded corners.
It is
Lovely
good,
stuff.
I think it's broken.
Oh dear.
Uh-oh.
Not gonna have how
Oh.
to do everything.
A little bit of interactivity and that should take it. But the API, they've got a Yoda.
I love the quotes.
Actually, I wonder if that's an API or if they've just got an array where they're just
Just keep
randomly
clicking it.
generating it, and yeah. See if you can get the same one twice, and that was probably just an array that they're nice got made.
I think this is an API.
Yeah, it's an API. It's just a Yoda quote API.
Serious no. Serious no on that.
You could ask them. Be interesting. Do or not do. That's not just Yoda. That's also Master Ube.
Okay, we're
Do or
three,
not do,
3
et
minutes from
cetera.
decision time, so it's time to get your best work in.
Should we give a 3-minute warning live?
Yeah.
Which one is it, Jake? I want to press the button. Oh no, for Phil.
Oh, for Phil.
Right, Phil, you're speaking now.
Well, you're not until you unmute your actual mic.
Right, am I on? This is a 3-minute warning. Anyone who's taking part online will choose a winner in 3 minutes.
And you're muted.
That's for the best.
Pirate speak.
Actually went quicker live than it did in the driver.
Well, quicker.
Yeah.
Because you didn't click.
Did I skipped out the whole bit where I got my CSS to work though.
It did work, but it was just caching issue. Because
Is that what it was? Caching. Caching,
It was
right.
blue.
It is blue.
You should have checked a different page. Because
Yeah.
it probably won't cache.
Yeah.
What is it? Oh, yeah, there's some snippets in there.
So pizza's here, is it?
Hello?
Ah, I thought someone said it's right.
I'll check it. You hungry?
It's what the people came for.
Next race.
Great.
Cool.
Awesome. Thanks.
I don't mind running down when it's right.
I remember I know where you live now, Tom, though, so you can't run away with it. I know your game.
You don't know where I live. That was my parents' house, actually.
Not in West Didsbury.
I live in East.
Oh.
Well, even now I've told you.
circle's getting smaller. Right. 20 seconds. We'll call it and choose a winner and have some pizza and some beer.
A mute? Yeah.
You should do your countdown clock now.
Hello, hello. It's time to choose a winner. So I hope you coped with the pressure, everyone. We've seen some really good ideas. Obviously some crowd pleasers. Pizza and beer was instantly, you know, people were thinking there's a winner already. There's some shameless self-promotion going on. Who would do that? Who would do that? Thank you. That pulled at my heartstrings, so that's a potential winner. But just in case I wasn't on mic earlier when I said this, I'm not going to choose the winner, just so that it's fair. Someone else in the room is going to choose. We have a lot of people who've gone with some, so you know, let's not underappreciate a simple CSS. Trusty Panda has put a lot more effort now into the CSS here. Look at this. Oh my goodness. And if I click, does it more balls appear? Oh, look at that. Right, okay. I'm not saying who I think should win, but it's that one. Okay, this is cool. Yoda says, difficult to see. Is this the same person as before, but they've added like cool CSS now? That is amazing. Who wouldn't want that when they opened their browser every day? Let's just check. Have I missed anyone? Is there anyone who feels they've been missed? Oh no, I've seen that one. Right, have we seen them all? That feels like they should be seen? Okay, well, someone at the back room, would you like to choose a winner? If it's someone online, I've put instructions on the last slide. I'll leave it on. They can DM me and I'll post it to them.
Can we see the rest of the pools move? Like the top of it, I want to see the Kung Fu Panda at the top.
Kung Fu Panda, all right.
You need to appreciate the whole thing, yeah.
Yeah, inner piece.
Trusty Panda's widget, inner piece, bouncing balls.
Click inside the ball area to add balls. And I think it'll just keep going forever.
Would you say the panda or the Yoda? What do you think, Jake?
Pressure.
I think it's got to be the panda for me.
For me, I'm going to vote for Yoda because I think, you know, they've
There's
gone
some
out there and
deliberation
it looks
going
like
on
they've used an
between
API,
Yoda fans
so
and
the
inner piece
deciding
fans.
vote goes to Craig.
Yoda or panda?
I'm going to go Yoda.
Yoda wins. So, Driving Panda. Is it someone in this room? Is it someone online? So, Driving Panda, well done. You might want to take a picture of this, screenshot it. If you just DM me your details, if you would like the prize. If you don't want the prize, that's fine. I'll assume I can just give it to someone here tonight. But let me know as soon as you can. Well done. Right, so that brings this session to a conclusion. Thank you so much, everyone who came. Thank you, everyone online, for following along. I hope it was easy to follow. And I hope even if you didn't get to the end, that you can take the time afterwards to go through the whole README. Thanks, everyone, for coming.